Good morning. This is June 2024, and today we're going to talk with Ilona Langteigne, who is a Ryla. And the Ryla family has lots of history, plus the Jalkanen family. So we might end up getting a little bit mixed up with all the names this morning, but we'll start and hopefully we do it. So, Ilona, it would be good to start how your mom and dad came here, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. That's the part that I'm not totally
Okay.
sure of, but my mom belonged to the Jalkanen family. There was actually, for a Finn family, more than enough children there, because there's my three uncles actually, Peter and Arthur, and maybe there's only two.
Okay.
And then my mother, Lillian, and Verna, Goriak, and Lila. I think she's the one Lila that went farther than the rest, because she went to New York, and she was the author of several books.
Okay.
In the States, of course. So
Right.
there wasn't a lot of connection between her and the rest of the family, because when she moved away, that was pretty much the
Right.
last we heard of her.
Okay.
And as far as mom and dad go, they were born here in Canada.
Okay.
My dad's mother actually came over from Finland. They sent her on a boat with a sign of her on her neck that she was going to Boston. And then from there she went up to Montreal, where she met my grandfather, Victor, and they ended up coming up to Red Rock. But way back when, the only road that came out of Nipigon that led to the Settlers Road went right to the Ryla homestead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after the war, they relocated and ended up in the farm in the Red Rock Township.
Okay.
And back in those days, it was very agricultural. And like, I know myself that my parents went to all the farms to do hay in the summer.
Right.
They did the haying. They went from Nick Sallow's property, right, which is right across from Beaver Valley, and then Lottie's property, my grandfather's, and then Inget's, and they did all the haying there on all three farms.
Okay.
And of course, we had to help as children.
Right.
I even ended up steering the 5-ton truck while we were picking up hay at my grandfather's. And I was kind of reluctant. I was one of those stubborn kids. And my dad set me in front of the wheel and he said, "You just go here." But he didn't tell me I had to turn when I got to the rock area. So he had to hop right up on the standing board there on the truck and turn it so that we wouldn't run right into it.
Okay. So at this time, your family lived at Stillwater.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the house was just beside the Stillwater Creek, which Stillwater Creek is still here today, and you lived there. That's where your family was at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he had a trailer court there.
Right.
We had an office, and all the hookups on the front part there, where they are for the trailers, right, and the other areas for camping trailers and whatnot were sort of interspersed,
right,
all along the creek up past where the creek comes in.
Okay.
And it's funny, because years later when I visited it, the whole stream had changed, because up above, like from the source of the creek, it had all divided into different streams.
Oh, okay.
And it was just something like, all of a sudden you had a major change there. But I was able, like, there was an old place on the rocks before the place where the snakes hid, where there was amethyst. Okay. Small pieces of amethyst had washed down,
right,
in the flow of the river,
right.
Creek.
Okay, so your family was there by Stillwater. Just tell me how many in your family and who they are. Name your siblings there.
Well, we went right down from Marjorie Landry.
Right.
She was the oldest, and then Judy Millen. And then two brothers, Hector and Richard. And it's Richard that ended up having the farm in Red Rock, and
Oh, okay.
and he had, well, the oldest one, Marjorie and Richard, had a cancer, lymphoma type B, and this is what they both passed away with. Like Marge,
okay.
she was barely 65, and then Richard was about 64.
Okay.
So it was one of these things that came when you were later on in life,
Right.
and you had no idea. It's just like
Right.
it happens like
Right.
that. And then myself, I was number 5, and I was always proud of being 5 because the year that I was born, every 5th child was Chinese. So I was the 5th. So I figured well, I always had a connection with China because I was born in that year when every 5th child was Chinese. But I was thin. So, but you had affiliations with other cultures.
Right.
Okay, I'll finish the rest.
Yep.
Yeah. Rita was about 15 months younger than me. And then we had a break in the family. And then in 58, 59, that's when Wendy and Lynn was born. Lynn is Mahoney now. And Wendy remained Isla right till the end of her days. She was only 51 when she passed, so we don't have a great amount of longevity in the family, which is enough to make me nervous. But so far, so good. Okay, so we're down to Lynn and Wendy, and then before them, Lisa was born in '69. Lisa, she was a Cormier, and my sister Katie was the last one. She was born in centennial year. And she was sort of our project for centennial year.
Yeah, right.
We've always called her that anyways.
Yeah, right.
So
Okay, so you had
that's
a
us.
big family.
That was a big family.
Right,
Yeah.
right, for sure.
And it worked out well because we were like 3 generations. The oldest 2 were already gone on to be a teacher and a nurse.
Right.
In fact, Judy looked after Marjorie's children. She had 4. 2 boys and 2 girls, while Marjorie went back to school and got her nursing degree. And then Judy went ahead and got her teaching.
Right.
And she ended up being principal of some of the schools. She worked in Dorian, and then she worked in Nipigon.
Right.
So she got a lot of experience under her.
Right. And I'll say Judy was very well known
Yes.
as a principal and as a teacher because she was in so many different places and she was very active. So
yeah,
she
well,
was
she was in the community choir here too.
Right.
And she also did work at the hospital, just part of the executive there, and that she was deeply involved with the hospital.
Right.
So,
Okay, so get back to your dad now. What would be your dad's main income? What did he do mainly then, Ilona?
well, he was always self-employed. He had a big, like a 5-ton truck, and first he used to haul slabs from that sawmill corner here
Okay.
on the Nipigon River, and that was his big thing. And then he worked in the bush camps too, because he would be off doing that kind of work. I think they worked right into the winter in those days.
Okay.
Because that way all the swamps were frozen.
Right.
And you could take a heavy truck to go into the bush.
Right.
And then after that, he got a contract with a driving school bus. And he had a big school bus there, eh?
Yes.
And it was really funny because the kids, for some reason, they just loved him. And he'd be so embarrassed. Come Christmas, they'd bring him all these little gifts. And he didn't know what to do with it. But they loved him dearly.
Right.
He only had problems with one student, and we don't have to go into names there. But this fellow would always start a fight or something. And my dad just stopped the bus. And he said, okay, no more of this. Out. You're going to walk home. And I tell you, that young lad, he behaved a lot better after that. See, you wouldn't be able to get away with that, but he was just doing what was fair.
Right.
And the other children really appreciated the fact that, he was sticking up for them, he had respect for them, and it made a big difference.
How many years do you think your dad drove bus?
Quite a while since I was younger, and then, and I also helped at the trailer court. I used to do, staying up at night and registering everybody in the evening sort of thing.
But I remember your dad having his bus,
Yeah.
and then your mom drove the little bus after that.
Yes, she did. She did the side roads going into Mattis Road to pick up students from there. And if the families were anything like our family, she probably had, you know,
Lots
a
of
little
good-
van
Right.
to pick up. And like even she was kind of one of these good-hearted women that did everything. She had a big garden. She looked after all of us children, you know, like herself. She didn't go
Right.
out and work specifically at any
Right.
particular job because she had a big job.
Right.
And they also had we had animals there at Stillwater. Like we had some cows, but at that stage we weren't really using them other than like when we needed meat sort of thing,
Right.
because they all ended up, they had mastitis, so their milk wasn't safe.
Oh, okay.
So then we got goats, and goats can be mean, but what doesn't help is when your older sisters take, like Rita and I, and would put us on the goats' backs when there was nobody there. So if we went ourselves, they would chase us, and those goats had horns. We had this huge wood pile that was stacked, you know, according to it should be stacked so that you could use it for a building
Right.
later. And we had to climb up these big wooden stack to get away from the goats. They chased us everywhere.
So what did you use the goats for?
Uh,
Milk.
Yeah,
Milk,
you could
yeah.
use them for milk.
Okay.
And then, of course, with milk, you make the cheese and
Right.
cilia, which is more or less just milk that you've left,
Right.
and it
Okay.
turns into a
Okay.
a pudding, eh?
Right. Right.
And this is what a lot of the old people lived on, that.
Right.
Between that and the dark rye bread with lots of butter.
Right.
And it was sort of a very simple living that way. They had their own potatoes, all their food they grew themselves.
Right.
So that was just the way you were as an agricultural
Right.
background.
Right.
You just had very simple.
Right. So located beside Stillwater then was your home and your campground. And your dad, you had told me, owned a lot of property out that area because land was cheap
Land
then.
was cheap.
Right.
Yeah, he owned all the property from above Stillwater Creek there. Or like, that's where Jorgensen's used to live, Helen
Right.
and
Oh, yes, across
Vance.
the creek.
Yeah,
Right, right.
across from there. All the way down the road to where Brennan's is now. That used to
Okay.
be the Texaco.
Right.
On both sides of the road.
Okay.
So he sold them off lot by lot as the family grew, so
Right.
that, you know, we were taken care of that way. There was never a lack of money. Like when myself and my sister went to school, we always had new clothes in the fall. You had to have a skirt below your knee. There was a code for dressing.
Right.
And even to go in gym, they had a special blue uniform
Right.
that had like bloomer bottoms
Yeah.
on it. And, you know, I even tried out for basketball, but I was no good. So, I mean, you try.
Right,
You know, you
right.
want to be part of that
Right.
that crowd. And there was a difference between the children that lived out on the highway from the children that grew up in town.
Right. There still is today.
And there still is today.
Right,
So Marilyn Daniel had written a book about
Yes.
the secrets of the Jack Pine.
Yes, I read
And she talked about all the people that lived on the road, the main families, say from
Right.
the Jalkinins to the Rylas to
The
Higgins
Daniels.
and Daniels
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And beside them even there was a family, the Thielmans, and they had 5 children. And they both worked. I think the woman that I worked for worked at the Husky and often would end up with a double shift because like here, somebody wouldn't turn
Right.
up. So you'd go for an evening shift and you wouldn't get home till the morning.
Right.
But she had these 5 children and I used to babysit for her. And back then it was 25 cents an hour and 50 cents after midnight. But, you know, you're not going to just leave till the woman's done
Right.
her work. And the first thing I did when I get there was go around, get all the underwear for the youngest child, wash it all up, put it on the aisle, on the clothesline so that we wouldn't run out. And then I bathed them all. And back in those days, you'd have a big steel tub that you'd put the warm water in and you always washed from the top down.
Right.
so that everybody was clean
Right.
before I put them to bed.
Right.
But
Can you remember who ran the Husky in those days, Ilona?
no, I don't actually. You know, the things that slip from your memory,
Yeah.
but I know I ended up working there like shortly after I was married. And one of the things they asked me was, "Do you have any children?" And I just said, "Just one, and that's the biggest one." Like,
But when
which is
I
true.
came here,
Yeah.
Carl ran the Husky.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
So I wondered if, I don't know if anybody did before him or not. I never ever heard.
I think there must have been, because he had the Town and Country at that
Right.
time.
Right.
So he had his own business there.
As well as the Husky. Right.
And there was a bit of a battle between my dad and him, because he wanted the use of that road there, because he was looking for a landing strip for copters and so on. But with Dad taking over that road, he didn't have that space. That he
Okay,
would
so
have
now you
needed.
have to explain what the road is you're talking about.
The Settlers Road, the first road of Nipigon that led up to my parents' home there. on
Right.
that
So Settlers Road now, it's still got a sign on it, I think, but everybody calls it the Tower Road
Yes.
because it goes up to the tower and is located beside the OPP station now.
Yes, which
One
was a
side
safe place for them to be. In fact,
Right.
they had to be, to look after this sort of battle that was going on between the two of them.
Right.
And actually, historically, I could see it happening, because with my dad's family, well, he was Finnish. And then with Harrods, they were German.
Right.
So they had their own thing. But, back in the day, there was still that animosity that existed
Right.
between the two different
Right. Nationality.
nationalities.
Right. So how do you think it got to be called Settlers Road?
Well,
I mean, your dad named it likely, but
because that was the first road in Nipigon, and it ended up at Settlers Road at my dad's property.
oh, I see.
And then later on, the road was continued, and it was all like horse and buggy sort of thing, because my uncle Arthur would tell us stories about when they went to Thunder Bay. They had to have the horses, and they all had like a coach, eh?
Right.
And they'd stop at Pearl Lake, and that's where they'd have their break, and they'd light a fire and make tea and stuff like that. This was way back in 1938.
Right. Right.
But my uncle Arthur, at the stage he was in, he had Alzheimer's, but he could remember 1938 and the mill and what was happening there. But with the Alzheimer's, after a while he couldn't remember
Right.
what things were,
Right.
like
Right.
what a pen was like and how you scratch a ticket, or
Right.
what is a telephone for.
Right.
So I would visit him and talk Finn
Okay.
as many words as I could.
So Settlers Road. Okay, let's stop there then, Kirsten. Pause for a minute. So Settlers Road, eventually though, led to so many other places, Ilona.
Yes.
It became and it still is, a very popular road because it goes north and then it goes to so many places. But
Yes.
Settlers Road goes to property that your family owned, and is it still in the family, that piece of property?
Yes.
It is, eh?
Yeah. At the big field that was there, Lynn and Terry Mahoney owned that property.
Okay.
But there was a bush lot up farther, like part of the property across from the road is probably on their property also. But there was a bushland with a place called Romeo's Road,
Right?
and my youngest sister owns that property
Okay.
as of today.
Okay, that's where her house is there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And there was 5 bridges that led up from my parents' home, and the second bridge is where you go into the side road, and there was a lake, Hawaiian Lake, that was owned by the property too, my dad's,
Okay.
like, and all the property around it.
Right.
And actually, up on that rock there is where they buried the ashes of my parents, above the
Oh,
lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think when you go up there, all I remember is Hansey Lake
Yeah.
on the left, and then I remember that little road that you could take and end up at Lockwis Lake.
Yeah,
but that's
off the
private
side.
now, so
Yeah.
it's closed off. But
Yeah.
yeah, it led to so many places on that road. So it was to your property originally, but how did it become a public road then, Ilona?
I think so. I think
Okay.
so. Yeah. Because there was 5 bridges up to the tower, and
tower,
each
right.
one was known for different things. Like the 3rd bridge, you'd go pick berries there, and then of course, there was fishing
Oh,
but there was a lot of partridges at, so you went hunting along the road too.
because at that flat rock was a building, right?
Yeah,
That there was a building there for something. I can't remember now what it was, but when I first came here, that's right. You went so far, and then there was a little building there, and people fished in that lake.
that would be
Yeah.
the 3rd lake.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Oh, it's interesting how that road developed into going so many places.
Yeah, well, even on just past Hawaiian Lake, there was like a hunter shack. This is what they would do. They would put up a building so that there was some shelter.
Right.
And that unfortunately ended up getting burnt down when my dad passed away, because he had put a bucket on top of the pipe that or the chimney that came up from the wood stove, and unknowing, the people that were just using it like to keep out of the weather and that lit a fire, and the chimney was blocked, so that was the end of that hunting shack.
Right. Right.
But people could still go there on their skidoos,
Right.
after my
Right.
dad passed away.
Right. And then it leads up to the tower, which is a microwave tower, and so
You can see forever up there. Like, you
Oh, I
can see
know.
all the lakes and
Right.
everything, the whole area.
it is still a very popular place
Yeah.
to go just to look at the scene. And recently, Art LaFramboise cut a trail to go the other way, and apparently you
That's
can
great.
see the other way. I haven't been there yet. I got to get there, but apparently the view then is the other side of that mountain. So they say it's an amazing view up there too. So
Yeah,
it's one of the
that's
more
new.
popular places that
Yeah.
people go just to look at the view. It's amazing.
And it was a fantastic patch of berries up there, too.
Right.
Like, you could pick blueberries and have your pail full in no time at all.
Right.
So it also had that as a drawing point,
Right.
too.
Right. But lots of people hunt up there too. So it's
Yes.
been a
Yeah.
very busy area
Yeah.
that your dad opened. So I wonder how your dad ever thought, oh, that's the place to put a road, or did he start that road there, do you think?
I think he did, because the first road from where we lived was the road that went in to his camp.
Okay.
And there was, like you said, that little lake before that.
Right.
There was a lot of tree planting there.
Okay.
And in fact, that kept a lot of young men employed for the
Right.
summer.
Right.
And they would go out with their bucket of little trees and, just
Yeah.
plant them so
Yeah.
deep so that,
So we have
there.
we have to remind people that it's not the Tower Road, it's Settlers Road. And the history behind it, because when I think of all the people that are traveling on it now, especially with the ATVs that leads everywhere, they have no idea that what the real name of it is. So I think that's one of the important things I thought about when talking to you, is that is a real piece of history.
Yes.
For Nipigon is
Yeah.
Settlers Road and where it leads to.
Yeah.
That's for
and there's
sure.
still people that go up, like, to the higher parts in the fall, like,
Yes.
to go hunting, because there was, good possibility
Right.
they might come out with a moose or something. There
And
was,
it's beautiful scenery up in there when
Yeah.
the colors are out
Yeah.
in the lake. And a lot of people did creek fishing part way up there. I can't remember how far up, but it was kind of a sand pit on one side, on the other side, lots of good creek fishing
Yeah.
up there as well. So
Yeah.
a busy area.
well, they would go to that sand pit to sight in their rocks, like their rifles.
Right. You're
They'd
right.
set up targets there, so they
Right.
didn't have to worry about,
Right.
you shoot something and it goes for a mile, like a 22 bullet sort of thing.
Yeah.
And right across from there for the fishing, it was like a cliff area. So if you did catch any fish, boy, you had fun trying to get them out of the creek,
Right.
because you were up so high
Oh, I see.
with the rocks, all the rock cut
right.
there, eh?
Right.
When you're easily up 10 feet,
Right.
and then you're fishing down from that.
Right. And then later on they logged up there.
Yes.
When you get far enough up, you go to the left, and there's lots of logging. And I know that the ATV trails go all the way to Dorian from there. It's amazing. They go back
Yes.
to Black
Yeah.
Sturgeon and Fraser Lake, all from that one road,
Yeah.
which is amazing. And now there are two homes on that road.
Yeah.
Yes, farther up, there's the two homes, Gordon's and Collins's.
Yeah.
Right, have got homes up there. And at one time, I don't know who owned that property then, that we had the cemetery there.
I was just going to say there was also the backup cemetery, and just when this one is too loaded, sort of thing. I don't believe there's anybody buried there yet.
No, that's
It's
Collins's property now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was on the cemetery committee when we got rid of that, because we had so much room here, and it started to go into cremations. And we could see that we wouldn't need that that one then. Yes.
In fact, they have that big sort of place where they put the ashes there now.
Right, the columbarium.
Yeah.
Yes, and we're putting up another one. So yeah, we decided we didn't need that one, but yeah, it was a really neat place to go and just look at. Oh, this whole great big area has been, because they have to be studied in order to be allowed to be a cemetery. So
yeah. Well, my brother Hector was in there because he really loved that area overlooking the lagoon.
Right.
And then my Uncle Art and Olga have their ashes in there too.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. So there's Jalkinins resting there too.
Okay.
And of course, in that graveyard is my grandmother Jalkinin Henny and her husband Natu. There, and even my aunt Olive Ryla with Anduinto are both resting in the lower part of the cemetery there.
So, but that cemetery has got a fence around it. It's all private, so they must be on one side of it or something.
Yes.
Okay.
They're to your right when you go in.
Okay.
And there's the upper level there, and then they're down on the lower level there.
Okay.
And even my husband's mother was buried down below there, and his father too.
Right. Okay.
So there's a lot of us in the ground.
Okay. Okay.
And in the spring, like Mother's Day or different occasions, it was the custom that you go and visit the graves.
Right.
And if you wanted to bring something fine, or if you just wanted to pull all the grass around the headstones, that was also good.
Right.
Because,
so are there headstones up there then, Ilona?
Yes.
Oh, are there?
Yeah. And after a while, instead of having the upright stones, they just had
the
flat,
right?
The blocks.
Right. So, that would be interesting to find that spot, because I didn't know it was there. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you go from the Rylas, which were a big family, but did your dad have brothers here?
Or just the one uncle, Uncle Unto, and his property was across the bridge there on Trent, North Trout.
Okay.
So he owned that property across from the farm property where my grandparents lived.
Okay.
So
this is the grandparents' Jalkinins.
Yes.
No,
this is the Ryla.
Oh, Ryla too.
Homestead there.
Okay.
The Jalkinins were down further on South Trout Creek.
Oh, I forget the two of them. Right.
Yeah. And one of the Jalkinins, Lillian, married my father, Edwin. And that's where we have the connection by blood. Okay. Because when my Uncle Arthur was in the hospital here and I would go visit him, all the nurses were wondering, like, I'm a Langteigne, okay, but they didn't always realize that was the background, that I was a Ryla and my mother was married to a Jalkinin.
Right.
So we had that going for us. And the thing is that when my Aunt Olga went, sometimes Uncle Art, he didn't recognize her because she didn't look like the rest of us. But I was volunteering to do crafts at that time. And it's funny, the one thing that the people really liked there, like the clients in the extended care, was just coloring.
Right.
And it was a quiet thing that they could do, and they could pick their own colors. But I always managed to sit right across from my uncle and make sure that we both had the same page to color. And if it was birds, he knew the colors. They would look like the birds that you were because
Right.
where they lived, they eventually got the property out in Orient Bay. They took over that in
Oh, yes,
'75.
of course,
Yeah,
of course.
and all around the main house, they had those special feeding stations for hummingbirds, and the
Right.
hummingbirds were there, and they had all kinds of different birds that came to the house.
So just to go back, we need to keep this so that people
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Olga and Art owned Windsor Lodge
yes,
out
yes,
on Highway 11, which was right at the beginning of Lake Nipigon there.
yeah,
And that very, very popular place as a campground and to launch your boat to go fishing.
yeah,
Yeah, so they were there a long time. It was very, and that building there was a railway building, right?
yeah. On the
Yes,
other side
because
of
there
where
was
they lived.
a railway
Yeah,
that ran right
yeah,
beside it,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
And they had a number of cabins there that they rented out yearly. Like in May, they'd have all the fishermen,
right,
and then in fall, all the hunters.
right,
And the same ones seemed to come back every year. They just loved being
right,
there,
right,
and they weren't really worried about the state of the cabins because it was basically a hang your hats place.
right,
And they always had a barbecue outside, and they could keep their boats there. And she had boats to rent.
right,
And she even had a house where she used to, or a building where she used to get gas for them in the gas cans and so on.
right,
So that was part of it. And they even had a little store there with all tackle and
right.
essentials and stuff like that.
Right. And so I can deviate there a little bit because Olga was well-known hunter. Not so
Yes.
much Art, but Olga was the hunter.
Yeah.
She was always out hunting in the fall, and Herman went hunting with her a couple of times. And,
Yeah.
yeah, very much of a character when it came to that.
Oh, yes.
But they were also instrumental in snowmobile races too, Ilona, right?
Yes.
They ran a lot of organizations for recreation. Art
Yes.
and Olga were well known for that as well. So that's all part of history when you think how many families are involved. So tell me what Olga's maiden name was, Ilona. Or do you know?
Well, I met some of her family in Thunder Bay. My memory fails me
Okay, that's
too.
all right.
I did go with her to meet her sister Mary, and Mary
Okay.
ended up living with her niece Joyce on the other side of Fort
Okay.
William, and we did visit there too.
Okay, I never did recall anybody saying it. It was always just Olga Jalkanen
And Arthur did the guiding. Her
Right.
husband
Right.
was the guide, and he did work for the mill at some
Right.
point
there, yeah,
as an electrician.
right,
And he did very well with that. But
Right.
when they had the chance to get this property, it was an ideal place to set
Right,
up
for
and,
them.
and it was a good business.
right.
And
Yeah.
it was still a good business right up
Right.
until the end.
And
In fact, there was a piece written about Olga that went into the newspaper and how she managed everything.
yes, yeah.
There. I've been worked for her for 4 years, and my cousin Christine said, you're the only one that I know that has actually worked with my mom for that long because she was kind of strict about things and
Right, right,
she liked things to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And once you had that schedule, you were fine. But we got along really well because she had all kinds of wisdom that like my mom having so many of us couldn't possibly teach us all these little things
Right.
about like when you're driving a car, the windshield wiper should be going at such an angle there so that you knew exactly where you were on the road and you could look for traffic coming behind you and in front of you. And she was very strict about this.
And Olga was well known for being the bookkeeper for Elder Wright.
Yes.
That was
yeah.
another one of her skills was the bookkeeping.
Yeah.
Very well known and very well liked for that because
Yeah.
she was precise again
Yeah.
about that. And I remember.
And she wasn't behind at all because she had a computer in the side room and she kept track of all her bills and everything that went in and out. So, like you said, that was a skill that she had.
Right.
That right to the end, she was
Right.
still doing her booking and
Right.
and making sure that everything
Yeah.
ran smoothly.
An amazing lady. So you
Yes.
come from a very varied family, Ilona, really. And
Yes.
you look at all of the things that they did.
Yes, exactly. And like even right to the end, I just loved being with my uncle because he was just one of these really kind, gentlemanly And that was a rare quality too. It was
Right.
the same as my uncle Unto. They were always, peace loving, and like they had good manners the way they
Right.
were raised,
Right.
and you enjoyed being
Right.
with them.
Right. Yeah.
Just
Art and Olga were quite a couple, that's for sure.
yes,
Okay, now deviate again here and tell me
yeah,
this little bit about the Finns
yes,
that had that other side to them. And I remember Anita Lang talking about the two halls,
yeah.
two Finn halls, because there's another story about the Finnish people there. So you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, I think they're like any different nationality. They tend to stick to their own group, and they had their own language, so that they were, at some point, they were sort of looked at as being alien to the English-speaking people in
Right.
Nipigon, which were like the biggest part of the Nipigon Township.
Right.
There was no question of bilingualism because French was no big deal then. Like
Right.
it was just totally ignored pretty well.
Right.
There was no classes in the schools like they
Right.
are today.
Right.
And even with our tribe at Lake Helen that came into the schools at St. Edward's at that time, it took quite a while before they had somebody that actually came into the school to teach these children their
Right.
language.
Right.
But they did make the attempt.
But I remember a lot of children starting school that only spoke Finn,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And had to learn the English language
yes.
at school. Right.
Well, with our family, the language was sort of kept as a weapon in front, like to the children, because when they spoke about stuff, they would do it in Finn. So that was we didn't know what they were talking about, and very often it was us and our bad behavior, because you didn't stay in the house, you didn't have a computer, you were encouraged to go outside
Right.
and play.
Right.
And the boys would do their own version of baseball or hockey, but the girls were never allowed to play with them. They just wouldn't put up with it. So we got to, go do the blueberry picking up at the where the big field is up on side of Settlers Road until we moved that way. And there was actually trees that were full of
Saskatoons
that
likely.
there were Saskatoons and
Right.
hazelnuts.
Right, hazelnuts.
Yeah,
too.
because you could pick a bucket of them, and there's no more of those there.
No.
And the blueberry bushes that circle the farmland up higher, which was owned by us anyway, went right to the that pipeline there, so you could go there,
Okay.
and it was an opening where you didn't have a ton of mosquitoes attacking you,
Right.
and we used to frequently go there just
Right.
to hang out and
Right.
pick berries and scare each other because there was bears there.
Right.
Because I remember my poor sister Rita, like, because I was one of the main babysitters, and she'd be picking, yeah,
Okay. She'd be picking.
blueberries in the bush, and I would sneak up behind her and make a growl, and she would almost jump out of her skin,
Okay. Let's stop again. And the other thing that comes to my mind is your dad and the flag, Ilona.
Oh yes.
When Canada decided to change a flag, your dad was right in there, and I can remember how stubborn he was over that flag. So can
Yeah.
you remember a little bit about what happened there?
Well, his idea of the flag was green on the sides because of being a new start, being representative of all the trees in the forest and stuff like that.
Right.
And he was very politically minded, and he was totally against the sovereignty. He had, no faith, no desire that we should be part of England,
Right.
and he made his views known
I know
quite
he did.
vocally.
Right.
And he was not afraid to stand up and say, "Listen, we belong to Canada. This is our place now."
Right.
And that's why he was such a great supporter of the NDP party. And in fact, he was a card carrying. So whatever their opinions were of the time, like which were for Canada, for the people, rather than having to bow down. Like I don't think he would have been a Legion member ever, because I cannot see him singing to the Queen or the
Right.
King.
Right.
That was totally one of his main dislikes. It's
Right.
the whole idea of being
So the
part of
flag
it.
that he wanted was green on the side of Canada,
Yes.
and it was just the maple leaf in the middle.
And just the
In the
maple
middle.
leaf in
And
the
he
middle.
actually had one made
Yes.
because Judy did have it, and I had taken a picture of it
Yeah.
before. Then he wanted that flag to represent Canada. But in the end, I mean, your dad gave in to the new flag, and I can remember him coming to the arena and donating a big flag that was put up on the wall. And how can I turn that off? I'm not good at that. Turning it, and I have a picture of him and maybe Mike on the Scavenge putting that big Canada flag up, because then in the end your dad was very proud that Canada had that new flag.
Yes.
And it wasn't related to England at all. It was
Yes.
strictly a Canadian flag. And then I have a picture of your dad in the council chambers because he donated the first Canada new flag to the township. And so that tells me that he was a proud Canadian, and was willing to donate the flags like that. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, he was very interested in the whole idea of being part of Canada. Like, like he was born here. In fact, he died within a mile of where he was born. And that was something else that was a great shock to us, because we didn't have the doctors then as we have now.
Right.
And it's like, even with my aunt, all of that went to the hospital before him. They were diagnosed with stomach problems, and they both went home and had a heart attack,
Right.
sort of thing. Just the way it happened.
Right.
So at one point it made me think, I wonder if there's some conspiracy going on,
Do you think your dad ever went to an NDP meeting?
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, he did, eh?
Yeah, because he had a card. He was
Right.
the card-carrying
Okay.
member
Okay.
of the NDP party, and
Right.
he supported them, right to the very end.
Right. Right.
So,
So was your mom politically minded at all, do you think?
I think she was too busy with all of
Oh.
us. And when my dad was out working in the bush camps, she had us to take care of, the
Right.
animals to take care of,
Right.
and to provide the garden and the milk and everything
Right.
that we needed.
Right.
Because we lived like 3 miles from Nipigon, from the town, so you couldn't just walk into the
Right.
corner store
Right.
and pick up something.
Right.
I mean, other than absolute necessities for the winter.
Right. Okay. It was just interesting because I definitely associate him with being proud of being a Canadian,
Yes.
in those days. And as you say, he spoke about it where few people didn't bother.
Yes.
Other people would never go around saying anything, but your dad made his feelings known and his beliefs known about that. So, and
Yeah, he was very strong about
he was.
things like that, the whole
Right.
nature of politics.
And he often got into little bits of confrontations, I think, because of his strong opinions. Yeah,
Yes.
people can remember that. Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was working at the Husky, he would come in for coffee, and that was his way of staying away from these turmoils that he probably started. But the thing is, we had that police station right there.
Right.
And he managed to get into a kerfuffle with some of the other people that were more of a different nationality. And he actually spent a night in jail. And he called my mother and he said, come here and get me free. And she just said, sorry, you're spending the night in jail. And she left him there. But I tell you, there's nothing like that to teach you a lesson about
Right.
being more careful and,
Right.
watching what you say, and keep your strong opinions
Right.
away from where you might be,
Right.
insulting somebody else, or
Yeah, for sure.
for some reason like this,
Yeah.
because he was quite a strong believer.
Yes, he was. He was very much so. Right. Really good. So that's a big part of history, Ilona, that you've shared with us today, from all of those families and the places that they lived. And I think that it's important that people know that now. When they see this interview, they'll relate a little bit more to that Stillwater Settler Road area. And
Yeah.
maybe we can instill in people that Settlers Road, it's not the Tower Road.
No,
Okay. Thanks
No.
very much, Ilona, for coming today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.
Yeah.